We're talking today with Dick Drury of Hopkins, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Dick, can you start us off with some background on yourself? And to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in September 13th, 1950 in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I did all my school in Portage, Michigan.
Okay.
And I had my draft noticed in high school, and I volunteered for the draft.
All right. Now, what did your family do for a living while you were growing up?
My dad had two jobs, basically. He was a carpenter, and then he went in and owned a bar in Portage, Michigan called the Tally Ho.
All right. Now, yourself, when you were in college, in high school, did you have any thoughts of going to college, or?
I had some thoughts of maybe going to college. Right after high school, I started being a painter, and I painted for that summer until I went into service.
Okay. But you hadn't applied to college at that point, so there's not a way to get a deferment in that direction.
No.
All right. So now, how old were you when you got the draft notice? Were you just turned 18?
I was 18.
Okay. And what was your reaction once you got the draft notice?
I figured I would be getting it, so it did not surprise me. But I come from a pretty military family. My fathers and uncles in World War II, and I just felt it was my obligation. Plus, I had two younger brothers, and being the oldest, I figured if I went, maybe they didn't have to, and that's how it did turn out, and I was happy for that.
Now, had you heard that there was a rule in place that if you had one son in Vietnam, they weren't going to send another one?
No, I didn't know that,
Okay.
but I know I didn't know that.
All right. Now, what did you know about Vietnam or the war at the time you went in?
I knew somewhat about it because my best buddy, he stood at my wedding and everything else. His brother was killed in Vietnam, so he took quite an interest in knowing about Vietnam, and I was very close to him, so I got to know somewhat about Vietnam, plus watching TV. You know, you've seen it about every night. I think they had something going on, so you knew pretty much what was going on.
All right. Now, did you, after you got the draft notice, I mean, where does the physical come into that? Do you do that before you actually report for training, or how does that work?
If my memory serves me right, once I went down and signed up, then I got my physical.
Okay. And where did they do that?
Detroit.
Okay. And what do you remember about that process?
Well, when we went down and had the physical, and I remember a room in there, and we're all standing in there, and a side door opened up, and the Marine Corps came in and says, "We need 6 people." And they went and chose 6 people to be Marines. Almost everybody there thought they would be going in the Army, and I think a lot of us, and me included, I didn't know the Marines drafted, but they did.
Yes, they did.
And so we had about 6 guys walk out there, pretty big. They had just been put in the Marine Corps.
All right. Now, was the Marine Corps something you wanted to avoid, or?
No, it didn't. It actually never came into my mind. If it would have happened, it would have happened. I wouldn't have felt. I've probably been a little bit more scared, but.
Did anybody step forward and offer to join the Marines, or did they just go pick people?
They just picked people.
All right. Did you notice anybody trying to sort of scam them in any way in terms of finding a way to get themselves disqualified physically?
I did witness it at the physical. When we had our physicals, they would limp, or they would try to come up with their eyes, simple things like that. Just a few people that I witnessed did that kind of a thing.
As far as you could tell, did any of that work?
Some of them, yes, it did.
Okay. All right. Now, once you've done the physical, do you get to go home then, or do they pack you off to boot camp?
No, you got to go back home, and they sent you the date that you have to report back and to go.
All right. Now, where do they send you for basic training?
Fort Knox, Kentucky.
All right. And how do they get you down there?
I believe my dad drove me down there.
Okay.
And I reported there, and I did my basic at there.
All right. Now, when you first get there, what was kind of the processing like when you arrived, first few days?
Well, you're scared to death. The drill sergeants scare you to death. You always heard about the yelling and screaming, which is true. You just learn very quickly to keep your mouth shut and do exactly what you're told to do, and you just did it. And if you didn't, people could get in trouble because of what you did, and you didn't want that. So you started working at a team very quickly.
All right. Now, did you have to take a bunch of tests, or had you done that already?
No, you did test there.
Okay.
They test your IQ. They test your marksmanship. They test your endurance and start building you up.
All right. What kind of people were you training alongside at that point? Where were they from, or what their backgrounds, as far as you can tell?
Well, a lot of them were from the southern states. I'd say from West Virginia and stuff. And those were the hardest guys to keep there. A lot of them would go AWOL, and they had to go back and get them. When they said they wanted to go home, they meant it, and they did.
Now, did they have a harder time adjusting than other guys? And why would that be?
I don't know. Most of them weren't rich kids or nothing. They were pretty poor kids, but when they wanted to go home, they wanted to go home, and they did.
They probably weren't used to crowds or a lot of the rest of that stuff.
Probably not, and being regimented.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people did things when they wanted to do it, and to be regimented, to do certain things at a certain time every day, it takes a while to get used to.
Okay. Now, were you in good shape when you went in?
Yeah, the skinny little guy. I probably weighed 155 pounds maybe, and yeah, I was in pretty good shape.
All right. So then how quickly did you sort of adapt to the system?
Quickly. I almost embraced it. I actually enjoyed being regimented. It fit right in with me. It's the type of person I was before, and it was just like a natural fit for me.
All right. Now, how would you characterize the drill instructors at that point?
Tough. During basic. At the end, when we were going to be leaving, they got to be closer with us and talked with us. And I had one drill sergeant that was real tough on us. But at the end of the basic, he says, "Now I will show you why I was so tough." He took his shirt off, and he had a bullet scar. He says, "This is what reality is going to be like for most of you. I want you to understand why I was so tough on you. And this is one of the reasons you have to pay attention. You have to do this and this and this." And my eyes opened up, and that was my first good check of things to come.
Now, this was a serious business.
This is serious. Yeah,
Okay.
it's no more happy time slapping people on the back type of deal.
All right. Now, where do they send you for AIT?
I went to Airborne Infantry, and I signed up to go to Airborne, and they sent me to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and you ran and you ran and you ran and you ran and you run some more, and we were physically put into shape. We didn't actually jump out of planes at there, but we did get rigged up. We did have the towers. We did learn to repel, and it was tougher than a normal AIT, and that's where my AIT was at.
Okay. Now, how long were basic training in AIT?
I believe they were 8 weeks.
Okay. Now, in the AIT, did you work with helicopters?
Yep.
Okay. And how did they introduce you to those, or what were you doing with them?
Well, since it's going to be airborne, you just learn to hop on them. They fly you around. You know, there it was a little bit different than being realistic, but you got your first taste of helicopters, your first smell, and the sound of them. The sound is always something you always remember.
Now, did they have you practice things like jumping out while the helicopter was still moving and off the ground?
Yeah, not as what would happen, but a little bit, yeah.
All right. Now, how much of an effort did they make to prepare you for Vietnam itself?
Not a whole lot. Like we didn't go to jungle school,
Okay.
or we didn't learn how to be a survivalist and things like that. They did teach you how to shoot, how to pick an object out of a thick area, how to march, stuff like that. But basically, of how, if you were to think of being put in a jungle, no, they didn't do that.
And did you get anything about, say, booby traps or things to watch out
They
for?
did. They told you about the sticks and don't pick something up that's out of place. Things, things like that.
Okay.
They did.
All right. Now, were you being trained by people who had been to Vietnam?
I believe most of them had been. I don't think all of them were, but a lot of them had been.
Okay. At Fort Gordon, did you go off base at all, or just stay there?
Yeah, not a whole lot. You were still a trainee, basically, so no, we didn't leave base very much at all. It's a pretty tough. You were tired at the end of the day.
All right. Now, at this point, is your next stop Vietnam, or do you go on to something else?
No, my next stop was, I was going to go to airborne, training, but I thought, well, what good is it? They're not jumping in Vietnam.
Okay, so the jump school, you're not, so you're
I
separate
said-
from what your AIT is.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I said, there's no sense going to jump school. I mean, if I was going to stay in the military, I knew I could come back and go to jump school.
Yeah.
So I thought right now, I knew probably where I was going to be going. So I said, well, why waste any more time? Let's just basically get to it.
All right. Now, did they give you a leave home first?
Yeah,
Okay, how long was that?
around 30 days.
Okay, so you got a full 30 days at that
Yep,
point.
yep.
All right. And then where do you have to report to ship out?
California. I'm not sure of the base. I'm not.
Okay, some people went to Fort Ord, some went to Travis, which is an Air Force base. to
I
fly
went
out
to an
of.
Air Force base. But I don't know which.
And there was a big depot in Oakland that a lot of people went through.
I think it was Oakland. I'm thinking that's where it was at.
All right. And so was it like a big place with a lot of guys being
Yep.
processed? Yeah.
Yep,
Okay. And then what do they do with you once you get there?
Just basically get you set up to put on a plane, and you just go and when they tell you to. We took off. We landed in Hawaii. They wouldn't let us off the airplane there. They kept us on, and I think we landed on Wake Island.
That's possible. Yeah.
And because I remember seeing all the airplanes off to the side of the runway, and I think that's my next stop would have been Vietnam. On the way back, I think we stopped at Guam, but in Japan, I was in Japan on the way back,
Yeah.
and I think that's Wake Island was the last one before Vietnam.
Just depends on how much fuel the plane
Yeah.
needed and then that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Okay. Where did you land in Vietnam?
Phu Bai, maybe. I'm not sure. It wasn't Cam Ranh Bay. What's the other big base they had down south?
South, they had two. They had several around Saigon.
It was around Saigon.
So you have Tan Son Nhut was the main airport. Long Binh and Bien Hoa are the other two.
Benoit. I think it was Benoit.
Because they processed a lot of guys out of Bien Hoa.
Yeah, I think it was
Okay.
Benoit.
What was your first impression of Vietnam when you got off the plane?
It wasn't even after I got off. My first step off the plane, the heat, humidity hit me in the face like a ton of bricks, and the smell, it stunk. And I coming from Michigan, this kind of hot weather was unbelievable. And I'm sweating before I even take my first step down the steps, but I do remember the heat and humidity right off you got off the plane.
All right. Now, did you land during the day?
Yes.
Okay. And then what did they do with you when you got off the plane?
We went into like a center where they educate you about a few things and assign you to where you're going to be going. And once you get your orders of where you're going to be going, then you're off.
Okay.
I think that lasted about a week or two, it seems like.
So they're trying to get you acclimated physically. Do you get miscellaneous duties on the base while you're there? And
Yeah, just what was weird, like we're talking to one another, how we're in Vietnam, we don't have a weapon, we don't have anything, we're just sitting around, and you know how your mind can race, and yeah, let's get this going. I'm sitting here with no weapon. Let's do something.
Yeah. No. Well, you're on the base. Did they get rocketed or mortared overnight, or was it quiet?
Before I went to my company,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
I don't remember being rocketed or anything.
Yeah. So you were kind of wondering when the war was going to start?
Yep, yep. Because you would see different guys too around. Some are leaving, some are going, and you can see the difference in faces. Yeah, you do.
Okay. Now, since you had signed up for Airborne, you probably had an expectation you'd wind up with 101st, or did you not really think about it?
I thought I would end up with an airborne unit somewhere, just because I had, and I went to Airborne AIT.
Right.
I already been with the helicopters and stuff, so I had a pretty good feeling, first cav
Yeah.
or something, that I would probably end up in one of those outfits, which was okay with me.
All right. Then how do they then get you up to join your unit? What's that process?
We took like a cargo C-130, flew up north at some airport close, and then I was trucked in to Camp Evans.
Yeah. And that could have been Phubai or Da Nang. Or
I think it
whatever.
was Phubai.
Yeah, that's just farther north than Da Nang.
Yeah.
So that's likely actually for Camp Evans. So,
Yeah.
okay, you trucked up there. All right. And then what kind of reception do you get at Camp Evans?
Nothing. Nobody said hi, nobody said anything. You just grab and you ask questions of, I was assigned to Delta Company, first to the 506. Well, okay, where's that? And I finally, after enough people told me, I finally did find it. And I walked into our little headquarters and I reported in. And okay, and here's a bunk, go down there and put your stuff down there, and we'll issue your equipment and stuff. They did. Then you start packing your ruck of your food, water, clothes, everything that you need to take out with you. And when they tell you it's time to go, it was time to go.
Now, did they have you do sort of a division's training course up there before you went in the field, or they just sent you right out to your company?
Right out.
Okay. Because at this point, a lot of them were getting what they called CERTS training, which was like about a week of learning how to be in Vietnam, but they did not do that for you.
No.
Okay. All right. Now, was your company in the field at the time you got out there?
Yes.
All right.
My day to go out, they told me it was time to go. And I said, okay. And they said, well, we have some ice cream we want you to, take with you. There's a couple other guys with me at this time. And so we hopped on the helicopter and I got the ice cream. Of course, it's hot, ice cream is going to be melting pretty quick. But by helicopter, it doesn't take too long to get out there. So we landed and I get off and put my rifle on and I grabbed the 2 things of ice cream and I go running over to where the people are. And there's some wounded guys that they were putting on a helicopter, and I stopped and looked at this, got my first little wake-up call real quick, but I go where a bunch of guys were, and I walk in, hi everybody, my name's Dick, and I got a guy jumped up and says, shut your mouth, you whisper out here. Well, I've been in the field a whole 2 minutes, and I've already had my ass chewed out. Ice cream's dripping all over me, and these guys are looking at me like, oh brother, a cherry, and so at least I had the ice cream, and they were thankful I brought out the ice cream.
Now, what was the approximate date when you got out there?
I would say around the end of March, sometime right around there.
Okay, so March 1970. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now, at that point, after you give them their ice cream or whatever, now do you stay out in the field for a while? Okay.
Yeah, I was assigned a guy to watch me. His name was John Knott. He was a thumper. And so
Translate that for an outside audience.
a thumper, it was the M79 grenade launcher, and he carried that. And so I did what I was told. Of course, being a new guy, you got every rotten job there was. I mean, listening post, I walked point. They, have you go out and start learning that. I did that, and
Now, how quickly did they put you out on point?
about 3 weeks, maybe
Oh, okay.
2 weeks.
All right. So it wasn't like your first day with them.
No. To walk point, you have to know. I was a fast learner.
All right. Now, was this an extended patrol they were on where you'd sleep in the field overnight and
Yeah.
then keep going?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, yep.
What do you remember about sort of first going out with them as your first marching at?
How hot it was, and how when you have 100 pounds on your back, I don't care how much training you have, you got to get used to humping, and that was very hard, very hard. It took me a couple weeks just to learn how to hump right.
All right. Now, did you learn to pack stuff differently over time?
Yep.
What did you learn? What was important to bring? What could you leave behind?
You wanted to bring as much like fruit cocktail as you could because you could eat it and it was good for you and it had liquid, but it was extremely heavy. So you didn't want to hump a lot of it. You try to put in there what you wanted to eat, what was good, like eggs and ham, and I mean, people just didn't eat that. That was just horrible stuff. So you learn to pack as lightly as you can and get by. We try to take 7 days with us, and that's 7 days worth of water too, which is a lot.
And what was the terrain like that you were operating in?
Mountains.
Okay.
Okay, we 90% of the time we were always in the mountains.
Okay. And then was this jungle as
Jungle,
well? Okay.
yes.
And so now, when you were moving, what size unit were you moving in? Company, platoon, squad?
Well, we would always work basically company size in the same area. Platoon size, we'd always be basically in platoon.
Yeah.
We very seldom would send out a squad to do something. We did it once in a while for ambushes and things like that, but mainly we would always be in a platoon size.
Right.
And the other platoons were always close by.
All right. Now, when you were moving through the jungle, do you move on trails, or how do you do it?
We try to stay off his trails as much as possible because you just knew booby traps were basically on them. Some areas there was no other way. They used them, we used them, and it was kind of like almost a mutual thing. You don't booby trap it, we don't booby trap it for you. I know that sounds crazy, but no, we stay off trails as much as possible.
Well, how do you move through jungle if you're not on a trail?
You just make your own trail.
Okay.
And the lead guys were always the guys that, they were breaking the bush. They were, looking for ways that was the easiest way. Just like anything else, you always look for your easiest way you could. Sometimes it was pretty tough going, especially up a hill. Breaking trail, going up in 100-degree heat. After a while, it takes its toll.
All right. Now, and then what would you do at night?
Well, when you first started, you had to dig your hole for that night, and then you took turns sleeping in your guard duty. So if you had like 3 guys in your hole with you, 2 would be sleeping and 1 would be in a hole guard duty.
All right. Now, how quickly did you get into contact with the enemy once you joined the company?
It was minor things. Me physically shooting at somebody or whatnot, it was quite a while.
Okay.
We did have contact, but I really basically wasn't physically involved in it.
Now, when you were moving, would you be in one kind of long single file line through the jungle?
Yeah, there would be a single line, staggered out. You didn't want to get grouped up or what, but.
Yeah.
You don't want to be making 5 trails. I mean, 1 trail and everybody goes through it, it would wear it down somewhat.
How much distance would you normally keep between each other as you did this?
I would say like 10 feet.
Okay.
After that, you might lose him.
Yeah, if it's intense enough jungle. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So contact might just be an individual sniper shot or a booby trap going off or something like that.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Or we would find a base camp and somebody might lob a few mortars at you and stuff. And at nighttime, they might probe you, shoot a couple RPGs to see if you'll shoot back. That type of thing.
Yeah, so they're out there, but you're not in a situation where you're getting into any large scale firefights.
Not at
or
that time, no.
Okay.
No.
Now, and did that stay that way through the rest of this patrol? And then you went back to base, or did things get hot before
No,
that?
it stayed. There was times, that, like, not me directly, but the company would be engaged. Basically, that till I came back, back to Camp Evans.
Okay. So and by the time, so about how long then did you stay out in the field with these guys?
The first time, I was probably out a month.
Okay.
In March, April.
Okay, so
yeah,
you
about
kind
in
of
April.
You get sort of toward the end of April, and you come back and you have a stand down at that point.
You know,
All right. Now, by the end of that, do you feel like you actually know what you're doing?
by the time I come back in, I felt I had learned a lot. I had a lot to learn, but I thought I had learned a lot, and I was starting fitting in with the rest of the guys, and they trusted me, and the bonds were starting to be made, and I started to feel pretty good about that.
Okay. Now, at this stage, were you just a rifleman?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Now, what's life in camp like as opposed to life out in the field?
Well, back at camp, you can get clean clothes, take a shower, go have a beer. They had a little movie theater. You could go watch a movie. Certain times you could call home if you could get the right things. If you're religious, they had the places that you could go and talk with a priest or something. Hot chow was probably one of the biggest things in not humping. I mean, it was, you almost felt human again.
All right. Now, when you're on the base, did you notice a lot of people using drugs and things like that, or
I did not personally
at the time?
see it.
Yeah.
I knew it was around there, and sometimes I did smell it, but basically, I personally didn't witness a whole lot of drug use.
And a stand down like this didn't last very long, did it? It was
No.
a few days or
It's,
whatever.
well, probably tops would be a week.
Okay.
You would have to get all resupplied, get weapons all checked, clean uniforms on. The higher ups had to check out the area where you were going into next. So yeah, it was a nice reprieve from the field.
All right. Now, who was your platoon leader at this point?
My platoon leader, the last one I can remember would have been Lieutenant Thompson. And I was an RTO in like maybe the first squad or second squad when I first started. There might have been another lieutenant, but I just
So
don't
not
remember.
one that sticks in your mind at that
No,
particular point.
no.
Okay. And do you remember who your squad leader was when you got there?
Sergeant Wise, I believe, was my sergeant at the time. That's right. That's right. Remember him.
Right. Yeah, because it's more important to you at that point being the
Yeah.
new guy anyway. All right. Now, once you finish the stand down, you go out in the field again. Was this now beginning of May, end of April?
This is by this stand down, we were hopscotching fire bases, and we come down getting ready for our next big move, which was in May,
Okay.
and that was into Firebase Maureen.
All right. Talk about that. What
Well,
happened with that one?
This one was my hot LZ baptism for me personally. We CA'd in a hot LZ.
Okay. That means combat assault. So you're
Right.
flying in the helicopters.
Yep, coming in, and everything's different when it's a hot LZ. You got to move, and which I moved as fast as I could humanly move. We were being mortared, shot at, 51s, tear gas, everything that imaginable was going on, and I got out, went to the bunker side. The guy told me to shoot, and I said, "At what?" Because I couldn't see anything. He says, "I don't care, just shoot." So I did, and after a while, it did calm down. But that was my first time that I seen my first dead enemy, and they were. I always told myself I wanted to jump on one of them and just punch him. Well, these guys were about 6 foot tall. They were missing their heads. But they were about 6 foot tall. They were Chinese, is what those two were. And I watched the guys put an airborne patch on them and throw their bodies over the side of the hill. And that is always, I've always remembered that as my first, this is reality here. And the whole company spent the night on Maureen.
Okay. Now, Maureen itself, now, was this something that was an active fire base, or was this just a place that
No,
had been a
it
fire base?
had been a fire base. It was abandoned.
Okay. So when they talked about having a bunker, was that sort of what was left of a bunker?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. The old bunkers that were there. Matter of fact, the two guys that were killed had come out of a bunker. And our whole, like I said, our whole company was there that first night. I was on a listening post out there, and it was pretty eerie. Next morning,
Well, did you hear anything at the listening post, or?
me and my buddies, all of us agreed that we thought we heard some sort of probing. We did not see anybody.
Right.
You know, it's pretty hard to see at nighttime.
And no one threw a satchel charge at you.
No. And we reported that the next day to the lieutenant. But then the next day we all went off different directions, all around Maureen, but all in different directions. And then second platoon made the mistake of coming back, or some say they were ordered back. I'm not sure who's right there, but they didn't, got hit very bad, and that's a Medal of Honor winner was there. A guy that was in our company a whole 2 days, I think, maybe a day. And the Distinguished Service Cross was awarded, and a Bronze Star with V's, and a Silver Star. So it was a big battle. We lost, I believe, 7 guys were killed that day. And I don't know how many wounded were taken out.
I mean, the one of the platoon that was there was pretty badly shot up.
Bad, real bad. And we came back the next morning as fast as we could, get to them. And we were doing our riff around it, and we come against like a big Chinese guy that was in camouflage boots and everything, and we finally rolled him over, and he was Chinese, and there was just no doubt. So that kind of woke me up of really what was out here.
How can you tell if someone's Chinese as opposed to Vietnamese?
Vietnamese are small people.
Okay.
Very small people. And he was probably a 180-pounder. His hair was different. I mean, it was black, but his features, he was just way bigger.
He was just too well fed.
Too well fed. Yeah. I was he an officer or something? I don't know. There was no weapon on him. They had taken that. But again, that was another wake-up call, another thing that you had to deal with.
Yeah. Now, how far away were you when that firefight happened?
Probably a less than a click.
Okay.
But there's nothing. I think. I'm trying to think back. One of the platoons tried to come back, and they were ambushed. And I think that's when we got the call saying, hold still, don't do anything, you're probably being set up too. And we did. And I think it was 3rd Platoon, and because it wasn't us. Yep. But I do remember, I was close enough where I could watch it. And it just broke your heart that you couldn't help these guys, because we could hear you, you can hear them.
At a certain point, they bring in air and artillery, right? So you could watch that part of the show too.
Yeah. But they had to be careful, because now we're here, 3rd Platoon's here, you got airplanes and helicopters shooting off. I mean, they had to be very careful where they were shooting at, not to, do more damage.
Yeah, and they had to call in things practically on top of themselves at that point too.
They did.
Yeah, so you're watching all of that, and there isn't really anything you can do.
You can do, and it's a horrible feeling. You want to, but most likely what's going to happen before you even get there.
All right. Now, once you get onto the base and so forth, what do they do with your company at that point after that battle? After
the battle, we were taken. We might have went back to Evans for a little bit of a stand down, but eventually we made it to. We were put on Firebase Catherine for almost a month, I guess, according to the book, is what we said we were on there, to get, new guys again, to get built back up again. We were never ever at full company strength,
Right.
never. And we were always cherry heavy. And when you work around the A Shaw up in I Corps, it just just wasn't a good thing. Just wasn't. But you had no other choice. You had to replenish guys, and we did, and they were good guys.
Now, what was actually at Catherine?
It was a fire base. It had guns on it, to support other troops out in the field
Right.
or other fire bases. It was a pretty nice fire base, but it was close to the A Shaw, so it took its fair share of incoming.
Okay. Would they use mortars, rockets, artillery? What would you get?
Mortars, basically mortars. Every once in a while, they might try and sneak up and shoot an RPG up to you, just to see what you would do. We lost 2 guys in a foxhole, a Kit Carson scout, and the reason I know this because I was in that foxhole, but I was taken out and put to the next foxhole because they needed somebody over there. And during the night, there was a horrible explosion, and we thought we were being hit. And the next day, we found their bodies in the Constantine wire, and there was a wire leading right back to the Kit Carson scout. So we knew what had happened. We were going to kill him, but the captain and stuff said we couldn't kill
Now,
him.
where was the scout then?
He was in a bunker behind us.
And there was a wire running from his position up to that foxhole.
Yes, he did. And I know because I seen it.
Oh, so a command detonated weapon and done
Yep.
from the inside. So did they just take him away at that point?
They took him away real quick. I do believe we would have killed him. These 2 new guys are 2 young guys, smiling, happy to be there. Gone and just, I think they were there no more than 3 days.
All right. Now, while you were on Catherine for that month or so, what were you doing day to day?
Beefing up the stuff on the base, you dig new holes or you check the wire, go on patrols, you might go out on a roof around it to check things that are around it. Do a little practicing of anything that you could practice, clean your weapon, the new guys to make sure they know what they're doing with their weapons, how to clean them, things like that, to keep yourself occupied.
Okay. Now, was it just your one company that was staying there, or did others go in and out, or?
I believe at that time it was just our company. I don't remember there was you got your artillery people there, your mortar people there, and your headquarters people there. But basically, believe it was our company that was protecting the base.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was sort of 1506's sort of main base of operations at that point. All right, and the other companies were out in the field farther at that point. Right. So did they send any of the platoons out for extended patrols in that time? Or?
Not extended. They'd go out on riffs. That was just a short check and come back in.
And so part of that is that gives you a chance to orient the new guys and give them some practice before they get into
Hopefully
the next level.
Pick up a few things. Yeah.
Right.
And Catherine was actually, it's better than humping in the field. So if you got a good fire base to stay on, you feel, geez, and you got some hot meals, you could take a shower, so you felt pretty good about it. And when he had to leave, he didn't really want to.
All right. So at what point do you have to leave then?
About a month after that. That would have been in May,
Gets you
going into June.
Okay.
Okay, and we just go out and hump. I don't remember a whole lot of, there was contact, but it wasn't battle contact. It was just harassment kind of stuff. Or we would find bunkers and blow them up and that type of thing. I don't remember being in anything. We had an incident, I think it happened at that, where we called in artillery and we had a short round of a 155 and killed a couple of our guys, and that was pretty demoralizing. I'm not sure the date of that anymore. I can find that out, but yeah.
Now, at what point do you start serving as an RTO? Does that come later? Or?
It probably after I left Catherine, I guess. I can't tell you who he was. There's an RTO. He must have been hurt or sent home, and they need an RTO, and they just said, "Okay, today you're an RTO." And so I put it on and was an RTO.
All right. Now, had you had any training with the radio before that?
Basic stuff they would teach you in basic about it in AIT, about how to use the radio and stuff like that. But the other RTOs that are in the squad will start teaching you what you do and make sure what you say on it and your call signs and stuff. So I picked up on that pretty quick.
All right. Now, as a squad RTO, are you just talking to the platoon leader, or
Right?
Okay, but you don't have access to the company. Do you use the company net too? Could you call company headquarters?
Yep, that's still to the company. There's a couple radios you have in a company at the captain has.
Yeah.
You know, he has the company RTO, which he can talk to anybody.
Yeah.
He also has a secure line, which he can talk clean into it. And but being in a what's the word? When you first get to be an RTO, you just talk basically to the lieutenant.
Right.
And he calls back to the company. Very seldom, unless I said something wrong, because the company RTO was always monitoring all the pushes.
Yeah.
And if you said something wrong, then he called back and let you know about it.
All right.
Which I did do.
Okay. Now, is a lot of what you're doing just sort of calling in regular reports? You know,
Yeah,
reps or
if
whatever?
you're on a RIF, you have to check in. You do the sit rips at nighttime. You know, you have to squelch twice if you're okay. And this, yeah,
So it's like making a noise in the microphone by
Yeah.
holding it, but not by talking.
not by talking. You always just hit it twice. You know, if you're okay, once if something was going on, and he'd ask you again, and you hit it again. If it was always once, then they knew something was going on, and you couldn't talk.
Okay. Yeah. Now, when you're out, you know, on the riffs or on longer times out, well, particularly when you're out in the field overnight, when you're doing that, how careful are they with things like noise and light discipline?
Pretty good. You can't take 100 people and be quiet, like a SEAL team would be slipping in there. That's not going to happen. The light discipline, I believe, is pretty good. Pretty good. You could learn to smoke a cigarette, and I could stand next to you, and you would never even see a light. But basically, it was pretty good.
Okay. Now, in the field, do you have people who are still trying to smoke pot or things like that? Or?
I never, in all my time, I've never seen one gentleman smoke pot. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I never seen it.
Yeah, it's really not an issue out
And
in the
if
field.
we would have caught one guy, he would have got a rifle butt right to the head, and that would have been it. My wife's downstairs.
All right. All right. But anyway, so you've had your time in Catherine, you're back out in the field, you start working on radio and so forth. So now are you on now another just extended patrol?
Yeah, we're just go up a hill, back down a hill, and search out an area, and that's what you would do.
And then would you go from area to area by helicopter, or were you walking everywhere?
Most of the time we were humping, unless I guess higher up wanted us to go check out another area, and we would either clear an LZ or use an LZ if it was not booby trapped or whatever. And they'd pick us up and set us someplace down, and you just start humping again, and that's what we did.
Okay. Now, has Lieutenant Thompson joined your unit by this time?
Yeah,
Okay, talk a little bit about him. What sort of character was he?
he was an oddball. He loved exotic fishes and stuff, and the reason I know that because I was his RTO, and his care packages were from home. He had squid and stinky sardines and stuff, and but he was a good guy. He cared about his people. Workmen thought he was too close to their troops, but I thought he was a good guy. I liked him. I mean, I was the closest guy to him because wherever he went, I went. basically, because I was his RTO.
And Workman was the new company commander at that
He was a
point?
company commander, yeah. Yeah, he came in there, I believe, in March, sometime in there.
Yep.
And he was a ranger and pretty gung-ho type of guy.
All right. Now, while you're operating kind of around the area where 2nd Battalion 506 was operating out of Firebase Ripcord, which was sort of a bald hilltop that eventually in July comes under siege. Now, in June into early mid-July, were you aware at all of what was going on with them, or was that just not your problem?
Personally, I didn't know, but you know, I was a little guy on a totem pole. I didn't know. We were by Hill 1000 at that time, pretty close to be going in. And Hill 1000 was a pretty active place too.
Yes, it was.
And we were on top of that. And we did that, and we got CA'd off of that. I remember just before going into Ripcord, I don't know if our company or our platoon was given command to somebody else for doing a patrol. But I distinctly remember this patrol because of what I seen. There was a fire base over here, and I do not know. It could have been Ripcord for all I know, but I don't know. There's helicopters coming into it and stuff. But at the base of this was bunkers everywhere. I've never seen so many enemy bunkers in my life. And there was a downed helicopter here, and I remember calling in the number of it to clear, you know, make sure that they did know about it, and they said that they did. There was their shoes, there was some of their equipment laying all over, which I had never seen, and I knew that this is not good. This is not what I wanted to see. And the trails were so worn that you could just about drive a car right through them. And then after that patrol, the whole company got back together again. Now, what that patrol was, I don't know, but I do remember it.
All right. But you said that at a certain point you think you actually got to the top of, well, Hill 1000?
Yeah.
Because that had two peaks on it, sort of a
something,
saddle
yeah.
in between kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you have any? Were you on the side that was closer to the fire base or not? I remember, but you were.
I don't know.
But you were up, but you didn't. When you went up it, were you being shot at, or was there?
I don't remember taking too much action at that time. I don't remember a whole lot going on. I do remember there was a lot of bunkers, a lot of activity. I mean, you knew you're in Indian country real good.
Right. You kind of were sort of in and out of there. All right. And then having conducted that patrol there, now did they take you back to another fire base, or what happens to you? Because you're getting close to the fight at Hill.
We went back to Camp Evans to get set up for our insertion into Ripcord. And we had a kind of a party and having some steaks and drinking beer and getting resupplied and stuff. And that's when we were going to be inserted in around Ripcord.
Yeah. All right. And do you remember Captain Workman going around talking to the men, or?
Oh yeah, yeah, he did. Personally, I liked the guy. I didn't see a lot of him, being a captain and stuff. But he got in. I like the picture here. He got in with the guys, have some beers and stuff. But he was once he was done with that, he was basically all Army.
All right. Now, but did you get an idea in advance that you were going to go into something ugly, or was this just another combat assault for you?
Personally, I heard guys talking about where we were going. Maybe the sergeants knew more. Lieutenants certainly did, because they'd always had their powwow before we would go in. But I do remember, make sure you take extra ammunition and this, and get ready. This might be a big one. And so we did. We put more ammunition on than we normally would take.
All right. Now this is getting into the latter part of July here. You go in sometime around 21st, 22nd,
To
someplace.
20th, I believe it was,
Okay.
July 20th. I was on the first bird.
Right. Okay.
Going in with Lieutenant Thompson, and being the RTO, it was my job to call back to the major. And when we landed, I called back a cold LZ. At that particular time we were taking, but me and Lieutenant Thompson looked around, and there was a commo wire going across the thing, and there was bunkers all around, and we don't quite like this. And about, I would say, maybe the third bird in, we took some 51 fire from the next hill. Well, then I called back a hot LZ, then everything starts moving fast now, because once so many people are down, you all got to come in.
Yeah.
And our platoon, went left. The next second platoon, third platoon went right. They took out that 51 or the shooting up there, and we went to the other knoll, and we were creeping up there, and I think we took some fire, and we slowly made our way to the top of this little knoll area.
Yeah.
And they had been digging a big hole, a big complex, and holy smokes, But anyway, we got all squared away there, and then we had to send out a riff, and the squad went down, and that's when those guys got killed. Another group went down. That's when the sergeants and Lieutenant Thompson were wounded and stuff. And basically, we were down to very few people left. And it was getting close to dark. Well, there's not much more you can do. You have to get out there. We couldn't defend it ourselves on that hill. So the second platoon, I think, went down by the LZ to help put strobe light out or something to help us get back across.
Okay. So this is sort of the Hill 805 fight then, right? Okay, so that's actually July 22nd, 23rd in terms of the dates by the time you've gotten over there. So but you're now, are you still physically okay at this point?
Yeah, I am the 20th. Lieutenant Thompson wanted me to stay on top because he wanted somebody to manage, and I had the radio. I mean, the guys left up here because almost all the sergeants and everybody else was down here. The guys left here. He felt comfortable leaving me there. Yeah. And so, and I knew by this time I knew what I was doing in the field, and I felt confident. Sergeant Mueller actually was his RTO the second time that he went down, and I from then on things become foggy to me, not because of not what I seen, but what I read about other people's actions after that. What I seen sometimes wasn't different from what people say that they did, so I'm not sure.
But from what I'm trying to sort of sort out just the time frame of this, because the sort of climactic fight for the company at that point
hadn't started yet.
Yeah. Okay. So this is before that. So you've already had your platoon has already gotten itself into some hot water already back there on the 20th.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Then night comes up, and Workman called over and says, "Okay, you guys got to come back." Okay. All right, we get all the guys together. We go down. We can hear them out in the bushes, and I think, this is not going to be a good thing. The flares are going off, but we do get back to them. And I remember going up to the headquarter people that were there, and I said, we're pretty low on ammunition. Can you make sure that some of our guys get some more ammunition, because they had used a lot that day? And they said, yeah. I talked to the medic, Doc Hayes. He was the CP medic, and he told me that Workman had a nervous breakdown. That DeWolf, one of the guys that got killed that day, was just his pet. He just for some reason. If that's the truth or not, 'cause I did not see workmen, and I can't confirm if that's really what happened or not. But, okay, but the ground was so rocky, we couldn't dig in. And he said, just put your people, so we did that. And then I can remember the next morning bending over, and I started tying my boot, and I heard 4 boom, 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 boom. And I knew then that this was going to be a bad day, and it did turn out to be that way. We took an awful lot of, I've read different reports on how many we took, and also reports that we took some 120s, which was kind of odd because they're a big, heavy mortar.
Yeah, but they had brought some in to start shooting at the Ripcord base,
Yeah.
and you're close enough to be in range with
Yeah.
those. Yeah.
And they said that we did take some of those, but things were happening so fast, so quick, that after that, it was an absolute free-for-all. I mean, one time we were told to go down by the LZ, they're gonna come and get us. Well, that didn't work, then go back up. Then we come back down. Then a bird was shot down. Then we had to go back and get a machine gun that was left up there. We did go back and get that. But this may seem odd, but this is a narrow thing for me, because like I said, you can't be around the whole hill. I might not have known what was going on 20 feet from me. It
Right.
might have been a completely different thing that was going on. And all I know was we're here, we're there, we're shooting here, we're blowing things, getting blown. I did see the 2 guys that shot down from a helicopter. They came in their thing, and they looked absolutely scared out of their minds, and they got out of their next bird that came in, which I don't blame them. But then the confusion started. Absolute confusion. And in the book, it says how some didn't think we were very good soldiers, that we just fell completely apart. Falling apart a lot, yeah, but we were still soldiers. I mean, we were still doing what we were to do.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, when things look like it's going to be about the end, things do get crazy. And that's how things got. I was down, I had got wounded.
Okay.
My elbow, my hearing, I could not hardly hear a damn thing. But what I found out later, what my wound was I got hit by a mortar, but I had no mortar in me, I had stones. They had blown stones into me. But anyway, I was down by the LZ at that time, and then I witnessed the guy falling from the helicopter. That was Swartz. That was that crazy medic that should have never been out there. The birds were coming in, and I personally thought at this time we were setting ourselves up to be CA'd out. So get your group set to go. And I was in a group, and I go. So I went. And then an RPG hit us right in the tail, and I thought, oh my God, this is... So I watched an RPG stuck in the tail all the way back to Evans, and I thought for sure this thing's, when you're 1,000 feet up, you think this is not going to be good. This is where my guilt comes in. I could have stayed. I mean, I wasn't functioning at 100%, but I could have stayed if I knew what was going to happen next. I didn't. I just assumed we were all going to be CA'd out like every other time this happens. This is how it was going to be, and it didn't turn out that way.
And was this when another helicopter got shot down and they had to close that LC, so they had to wait till the next day to get people out?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They pushed that away. One of the guys that got killed was from St. John's, Michigan. His name was Law. I met a person that knew him later on in life. That the guys that got out of there at these particular flights, we were waiting for the rest of the troops to come.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't. Well, then when they did finally come back, they were mad at us. Some of them were mad at us. Why didn't you guys stay? Why? and I actually felt horrible. I mean, I really, then learning that workman was killed and all the rest of them were killed, it devastated me. I felt I should have been there. I can't take that back, but I just was doing what I thought we would do.
And that was actually the plan at that point.
That was the plan.
You were supposed to be getting out.
As the plan was told to me at this time. Now you got to understand, most of our lieutenants were gone. Almost all of our sergeants were gone. Workman, I never seen him. Never seen the headquarters company. I have no idea even where they were at.
Right.
And we were just reacting to situations at this time. Then I seen when on top of the hill, the medic, Doc Hayes, we were getting mortared pretty heavy, and he stood up and said, "I can't take this anymore." Well, next round got him in. He was killed, and he was a conscientious objector. You know, he just he shouldn't have been there, but he was killed. And that always bothered me that he stood up. If he just would have stayed down, he probably would have been okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay, this tape here is about out, so we're gonna.
Oh, I'm talking.
Story. We're sort of late July of 1970. You've been medevaced out of the Ripcord AO. You're back. The company has come back. You've gotten back together. Ripcord itself gets abandoned at this time, and so 2506 comes back to Evans and so forth. Now that this has all gone down, what happens with you and your company?
After they got back, there just was not very many left that was field ready. The company was down to, I would think, less than 30 people. The General Barry flies in and tells us that, yes, it's a bad thing, and yes, but you're going back out in the field. And I'm not positive of, I think we went to a fire base someplace, but I am not positive of that. But here we go again. Now we got to get a whole bunch of whole new people. We got a new company commander. We have all new sergeants. We have all new lieutenants. And what good are we for a time?
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get a combat-ready company organized. But after Ripcord, there was not much going on. The enemy didn't want to make any more contact with us. And there were some sporadic little firefights. But for our company, the big battles were done.
Now, do you think that you might have gone back to Catherine or to Gladiator or one of those? Or?
Most likely, we did. We probably went there to supplement another company just to get. They didn't. 101st Airborne didn't leave in combat troops in the rear. You were put someplace in the field, somewhere doing something.
Right. Now, yourself, you had been injured by the mortar blast. Now, did that just temporarily affect your hearing?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I have hearing aids today, but yes, it did.
Yeah, and the elbow
the ringing. My elbow swelled up, and it took about a couple weeks for that to go down, and where I could use it every day. And so my injuries weren't bad at all.
But you basically stayed with your unit the whole time? They didn't send you to the rear or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Then, until December.
Okay.
Then December, my time was starting to get short, and I was a company commander's RTO, and there was an opening for a battalion RTO, and he asked me if I wanted to go there, and I said, yeah. And so I think in January of 1971, I think I went to our battalion, to be a battalion RTO.
And do you remember what base that was on?
Camp Evans.
Oh, that was back then. Okay. Now, before that, while you're out in the smaller base, out of the field with the company, during the time you were there, did they ever get sapper attacks or mortar attacks? Or
Oh yeah. Zapper attacks. You got mainly probing. On Maureen, they did hit. And they very well, and most likely were around Ripcord at the same time. I can't believe they would not use them.
Yeah, well, they did against some of the companies at certain points.
mortars. They would always try to lob a few at you every once in a while just to see what you would do and stuff. But after that, it wasn't a whole lot.
Okay. So the base you were on didn't get overrun at any point, or they didn't
No.
break in the wire? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No.
So now at this point, because of what you'd gone through already, were you kind of expecting something was still going to happen to you, or were you hoping that maybe it would just stay quiet?
You know, when you get to your chair, you're scared. Then after a while, you're just calm. You're just doing your job. You just go and do your job, and you're not scared anymore. It's just is what you do. You know, this is what you have to do to stay alive. So you do it. Then you get short, and then you start thinking about, wow, man, I think I might make it out of here. And then you start wondering again, and it does happen to you. And I did, but I was sent back to the rear, and so my big fighting was done.
Okay. Now you're back at Camp Evans, and then what was, so that you're like your last couple of months basically in Vietnam, or last 3 months, or
Last 2 months.
Okay.
It was just basically running radios, checking radios, doing sit reps at nighttime. You know, you would sit there and you call all the companies that are out in the field and see what was going on, if anything like that. And it was easy work from what you were doing.
Okay. So did you have kind of a daily routine at that point?
Basically, yeah. I had my own bunk, and if they needed to run radios during the day, I'd do it during the day. Then we would switch, and you do them at night. But it was basically just a normal Army job then.
All right. And what were the personnel like that you were working with in battalion headquarters?
The guys I worked with were pretty good guys. I never liked much of the lieutenant colonels and colonels and stuff. I didn't care for much of them. I just didn't have much respect for them whatsoever. The one regret though is I wasn't with my buddies, and that's a real hard thing to see them get on a helicopter and go out and not you with them. It takes you a while to get used to that, and I felt a little uncomfortable with that. But I was smart enough to know to stay in the rear if you got a rear job.
Yeah. Now, what sorts of people were there on Camp Evans, or were there particular types, or
Well, you
had guys of different sorts?
you had some artillery guys, you had helicopter pilots, you had the MPs, you had cooks, you know, the normal things that need to take to run a base. What was always odd is that they always looked so clean. They had good, clean uniforms, boots were shined, and had nice, crisp hats, and this type of thing, which was odd coming out of the field. You know, because you're always grubby, ripped up, and it looked so odd for a while.
Yeah. But did you eventually start to look like them? Or
I had to.
Okay, so you had to wear the clean uniforms.
I
and
had
all that
to being in a battalion RTO. You had to look good. You couldn't. You did.
Yeah. Now, there are a lot of stories about actually Camp Evans at this time as being kind of a wild place with angry bunches of black soldiers going around beating people up, and a large-scale drug culture, and lots of attempted fraggings and things like that. How much of that did you actually see, or is that so? That's not really your impression?
That's not my impression, but I can't say, hi, honey. I did not witness that. I did witness some blacks harassing other blacks. They try to do everything they could to entice something, like grow their hair longer than they should, not dressing like they should, just to see what would happen to them. I did see that. But as far as the fragging goes, I never did witness anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where I will have a lot of people who will tell me, well, they heard about this or that, but the actual incidents they talk about are often not as anywhere near as dramatic as
It may never even happen,
Yeah.
but there could just be talk of it happening.
Yeah.
I did find one thing, though, when we were in the field one time, that was in a small cave. We went and checked it out, and they had printed up brochures of black brothers, why are you fighting this white man's war? What are you doing? And we all kind of got a chuckle out of that. I says, my God, this is PR, clear out here. And we did find those.
Now, was it common to find supplies and things like that in the caves or in bunkers when you found those, or were they usually empty?
Most of the time, empty. If you found one with stuff in it, that means either we just pushed them out, or they're closer, or they're going to be coming back. They usually did not, unless they got caught off guard. They didn't leave anything around.
Right.
They policed up everything.
Okay. Now, while you're at Evans now, are you learning about what's happening or not happening in the rest of the war? Are you better informed, or do you just focus on your job?
I'm an RTO, so I hear all the incoming stuff from all over, all the companies and stuff. And of course, being there, you hear talk of what's going on here, what's going on there, and so you kind of get a little scoop of what could be going on around. Yeah.
And what was your impression of the war, the bit larger war at that time? What did you think was happening or not happening, or was it going the right way or not?
I really didn't know, because being up in I Corps, I really didn't know what was going down in the southern part of Vietnam. I really didn't have any idea. I didn't have any newspapers. There's no news, so I really didn't know what was going on in the other parts. All I knew was what was going on in ours.
And did you have any kind of feeling about, was anybody winning or anything like that? Were we winning or losing, or could you not
I always
tell?
felt we were winning. I just thought, well, nobody can stand up to this punishment all the time, and I knew they were good soldiers, and we were fighting the best against the best, and but I did. I thought at that time we were doing the honorable thing here.
All right. Now, on Camp Evans itself, did they have Vietnamese civilians working
Yep.
there? Okay.
Yep.
And what kinds of things were they doing?
The laundry, cleaning up your barracks and stuff. I mean, being in the field, you never saw this.
Yeah.
This is when I got back.
Yeah.
This is what I
Right.
seen to do. They did. I think they had too many of them. Sometimes they would find a guy pacing things off, and he was gone and stuff like that. Yeah, they had workers there.
Yeah. Now, did Evans get rocket attacks or mortar attacks?
Yeah, they got you got mainly like 120s.
Yeah.
They were just a rocket that shot off. You never knew where it was going to land, and we got some of those. And there was a couple times where they had some enemy trying to sneak up, but all in all, they didn't try to ever attack a base like that.
All right. Now, over the course of your time in Vietnam, so you're there for a full year. You're through the monsoon season then? Remember where you were when the monsoon?
Mountains.
Okay.
Horrible rains. You just cannot believe how hard it can rain, and you're cold at nighttime. Some of the worst things in Vietnam was bugs, snakes, little things like that. Those no-see-ums at nighttime would bite you, and you can't yell out. You just have to be bit. Every morning, basically, you had to take your clothes off because the leeches would get on you. If you probably go through all the records, we had probably as many, if not more, people taken out of the field because of jungle rot.
Yeah.
I got scars on my. They had to take me out with jungle rot, falling off cliffs, breaking ankles. I mean, we lost probably way more guys in things like that than actually being shot.
Yeah.
So it was a hostile area to operate in.
All right. Okay. Yeah, because controlling infection was almost impossible out in the field, I guess, or just so you'd get it, and a small scratch could become an ugly thing pretty fast.
It can jungle rot. One morning, mine was the size of, let's say, a little bit smaller than a pea. The next morning, it's the size of a quarter. Well, you have to go out.
Yeah.
If not, it will eat your legs. And I can tell you firsthand account how fast it does eat your leg up. And so, yeah, you have to get out of there.
All right. Now, think over the year that you spent in Vietnam. Are there other particular memories or things that kind of stand out in your mind that you haven't brought into the story yet?
Well, everybody always looks at the negative, but there was some good things too. Funny things. We were going up a hill, raining real hard, and we slipped down, and we must have slid 100 some feet on our backs. And for some reason, we all just thought that was just funnier than a hoot. I mean, we were muddy, but it didn't matter. And then one time in one of the mountains, we were humping up, and we got to a plateau. And I looked over, and off the side of the mountain was like a small waterfall. And it was just absolutely beautiful. And I'm thinking, it's just too bad that there's a war in this country, because this land is absolutely beautiful country. And in the cities, which we very seldom, we went away one time, and we were completely out of our element. I mean, we were humpers. We weren't guys that go into a city, but for some reason we did. And just seeing all the people was odd. We worked the lowlands one time, and we thought we were pretty good. And we humped, and we set up our night position, wake up the next morning, and we got like 20 people out there wanting to sell us Cokes and stuff. And we were pretty, number one, ashamed of ourselves that they could find us so easy, but we thought we were pretty good, but the kids knew exactly where we were, out there to sell us ice and pop the next morning. So I'm glad we got back into the mountains, because the lowlands scared the tar out of us.
All right. Now, were you just in the lowlands for a short period of time there?
Yeah, we didn't stay in lowlands, just like maybe a week and do a mission that they wanted us to do. No, we were 95% of the time we were always in the mountains.
All right. So you get to the end of your year, you get into March or whatever. Was it March or February they send you back? Or
At the end of February, I believe it was.
Okay. Now, what's the process for getting you home?
Well, at that particular time, it was people they're shortening up their sentence, their time to go home, to get Vietnam Nation going.
Yeah.
So I was figuring, well, maybe I would be going here maybe in February or what. Well, then they had Lam Sam or whatever they call it
719, yeah.
going on, and everybody was their short timers were canceled. You had to stay just about your full time. So I did. Just a few days short of actually having my. I thought, oh brother, here we go, but we didn't get involved with that. So I got down to Cameron Bay, and if you want to get in this airplane, you make sure you don't have these utensils on you or knives or anything. And my dad had sent me a knife that I wanted to keep, but no, off it came and into the big tub they had there, and flew home.
All right. Now, what was the mood on the plane like?
Once we were airborne, once we could, everybody kind of looked around, and finally, and you saw Americans, women. It was, you're looking at them, and they're smiling, and finally you're happy. You know what I mean? But it gave you time to reflect a little bit, because that's a long flight, and you always worried about your buddies and the ones you left. Are they going to be okay? And you think to your time, well, why did I live and they didn't? And was I a good soldier? Or I want to see my mom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All that goes at all at one time.
Yeah. While you were over there, how much contact did you have with home?
Just letters.
Okay.
Just letters. I tried calling one time, and that didn't work. I did call when I was in R&R, and I talked to him for like 3 minutes. But basically, it was just letters.
Yeah. Where did you go in R&R, by the way?
I had 2 R&Rs. I went to Taiwan, and I went to Bangkok. I had a blast at both the places. They were fun.
Yeah. Now, is it hard to get on a plane to go back after you've been, out in the world for a while?
Nah. It was. You just knew this is the way it was, and you had your fun, and it was time to go back.
All right. Okay. Now, when you come back to the States, where do you land? Is it back in California again, or Fort Lewis?
No, I think it was up in Washington.
Yeah, Fort Lewis probably.
Yeah. And I remember the snow on the mountains and stuff.
Yeah.
And
what do they do with you when you land?
I got off the plane, and I had set there for my next one. I think my next flight was into Chicago, I think, coming home.
Yeah.
I just sat at the terminal. There was a long layover,
Okay.
and I just sat there.
So the terminal, so this at the Seattle airport, then SeaTac or whatever.
Whatever big airport.
When you were in the airport, did you see any protesters?
No, no, I didn't. But on the other hand, I'd never seen anybody walk up and say thank you either. So I just let it go, and I really didn't care.
Yeah, but I mean, some people, ran into protesters who were
Oh, yeah.
hostile. Others didn't see any. So I just always check and find out. Okay, did you see any or
When I
not?
got back to Chicago, there was an ex-Marine. He saw that I was carrying a heavy set my bag. He said, "Well, let me help you." And by gosh, he picked it up and we walked to where I was going to, and he set it down for me. So my experience was a good one. There was an older Marine that did that.
Now, did you still have time left on your enlistment at that
Yep.
point? Okay, so you were going home on leave right now?
Yep. Then I reported back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I was put into weapons pool.
Okay.
And that was just someplace to put me to get my time in. And then by September, I was out.
All right. Now, did they make any effort to encourage you to re-enlist?
A little bit. It wasn't a big push, Dick. If you want, actually, I enjoyed the military. I liked the regiment. I liked what I did, but I didn't like all the rules, and I didn't like that they wouldn't court-martial me or give me an Article 15, but there was a second lieutenant, and I wouldn't salute him. And I told him I wasn't going to. Well, then he got a hold of my company commander, and I had to dig a hole for a while and fill it back in and that kind of thing. But that kind of stuff just didn't fly with me, and I couldn't stay in that. I mean, that was just me. And so I got out.
All right. Now, once you get out, what do you do?
I come back home. I get a job at the Kalamazoo State mental health building there, and I worked in there, and I met my wife, and the following April, we were married. I met her in April, and we got married in October, and been married 40 years since. So that's all I wanted to do was be a family man and have some kids and be a good dad, and that was me.
All right. Now, did you stay with the mental hospital, or did you go off and do something else later? Or?
Yes, I did. I finally became a truck driver, and did that. That was my career. I was a local truck driver. I didn't go overnight or anything. I stayed home. I mean, I was home every night.
All right. Did you have any problems readjusting to civilian life?
Yeah, I did. Took me a long time to sleep in a bed. I didn't like, even today, I don't like loud noises. I don't like helicopter noises. I do have PTSD that I'm being treated for. I'm on medication to calm me down. I'm functioning okay.
But you managed to do things like hold jobs and stay married. So
Yeah. Well, I'm an oddball.
not so odd as it turns out.
Yeah, Dick, you don't fit the description of this. Most of the guys are alcoholics. My dad was an alcoholic. I told myself I never was going to be, and I didn't. I always loved my wife, and that was not a problem with that. And so, but I was an odd duck because most of them don't, and that was okay with me.
Yeah. Well, it seems to vary quite widely, but actually the connection with World War II was significant because a lot of those guys brought that sort of baggage back with them too.
Well,
we just don't hear about it as much.
My dad was a medic, and he was on D-Day, and he was on Iwo Jima where he was wounded. But being a medic, what do you see but nothing but gore?
Yeah.
And with a battle like that, what that man must have gone through, it's been horrible, horrible.
All right. Okay. Let's see. And then I guess the other thing is you're also now involved doing support for veterans. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We have a little store in Wayland that we sell. We get most of our stuff from Myers, and we sell. The money that we get, we go and help homeless veterans or veterans, get gas cards to get gas to go look for a job, clothes to look good for a job, they need some medical work done that we can help with, we have stand down that is coming up that we do. And there's a place on Century Avenue for veterans, and we get food for them. So I stay connected with the veterans. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are these mostly older veterans you deal with? Or are you getting guys coming back from Iraq
No.
and Afghanistan now?
Unfortunately, we're getting young guys too. And I say that, I was just hoping that things would have been learned, that to take care of these guys before they would get into situations like this. But unfortunately, we are getting some young veterans. Not a lot, but we are getting them.
Yeah. I mean, there's more in place now than there used to be, largely because of the Vietnam veterans that
Yeah.
insisted upon it back in
Yeah.
their time. But it still depends on the veterans knowing what to go for and taking advantage of it.
Yep, they do. And if we can get a hold of them quick and stuff and find them all the help they need, it's sure better than waiting 30 years like we had to find out what was going on. If we can get a hold of them early, I think it helps them out. It really does.
All right. Well, I think that probably makes a pretty good spot to close out. So I'd just
Okay.
like to thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Well, I thank you for coming.